it genuinely seems like the days of selling your artwork because it is somehow visually special, those days got to be over. Because the things that are coming out are remarkably interesting and beautiful looking.
Welcome to Art for All, the Sketchbook Skool podcast. I'm your host, Danny Gregory. I'm the author of a dozen or so books on art and creativity, and I'm a sketchbook artist. And I'm the founder of Sketchbook Skool. In each episode of Art for All, I invite a friend to talk about things that matter to us. It's the sort of unhurried conversation that we don't get enough of these days. It's the sort of unhurried conversation that we just don't get enough of these days. I hope you'll enjoy it with us. Today I'm going to be talking to Tom Hart. Tom is an award-winning cartoonist, a New York Times bestselling author, and the executive director of the Sequential Artists Workshop, or SAW, a school for cartooning and graphic novels. He's also taught at Sketchbook Skool. Tom is a smart and interesting person, and I learn so much every time we talk. And we can talk about just about anything. We discovered that we share an interest in AI, or artificial intelligence, particularly in how it applies to music, writing, and art making. Let's see where that goes.
Do you want to talk about the things we might want to talk about ahead of time, or just dig in?
Okay.
Really up to you.
Well, I thought one thing that could be of interest is to talk about grief. It's always upbeat, always fun. We could talk about visual storytelling. We could talk about being a teacher.
Can we talk about AI?
It's so funny you said that, because I was just thinking, I just clicked through to my email and I'm obsessed with DALL-E 2. But what you can do is you can upload your own image.
Oh.
So I upload a drawing and then it does its own version of my drawing, which is super cool.
Let's talk about that.
Okay, we can talk about that. Yeah, I mean, what do you think? I played around with various AI writing programs, and where you can sort of describe an idea and it will generate endless. I mean, you can write a novel, it can do all kinds of things. And I found it like reasonably useful. It didn't really particularly help me, but I find the visual thing it's just amazing to watch. I don't know how I feel about the final images, but it's just a staggering accomplishment. It's as if my dog walked in and started talking French. Yeah.
Yeah. DALL-E 2 got real public, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks ago or maybe 2 months ago or something like that. It was really recent, right? It's so rapid, the changes. And just today, the one reason it's on my mind today is I saw a YouTube video about a guy who made a graphic novel in one day using only AI. And so he used the writing program. He typed in a bunch of parameters and things. It's about a dog and this and that. And the writing AI spat out a bunch of prose, and he kept tweaking it, adding a little more. It would spit out more prose. And then this is pretty much one of the only few steps where he was really in charge. Is he took a bunch of that prose and organized it into an outline, trimming what he didn't like, keeping what he did like, and then he had a script. And from that script, he just went to it's not DALL-E, it's Journey, Midjourney. Yeah, Midjourney.
Yeah, Midjourney is another form of it. Yeah.
And he just spent the next couple hours generating images. And by the end of it, he put it all into Affinity Publisher. And by the end of it, he had a PDF ready to go to Blurb. And I desperately want a copy. It is very weird. It's really compelling looking. And I say that in I'm interested in the artwork and I'm interested in the mashup and all the incongruities, right? It doesn't look like it would move me in the way my favorite movies do or my favorite graphic novels do. But that's probably only a few years away. And that's what's striking to me is I really am feeling, I'm very, very curious about that AI stuff, but I'm also very, very curious about what are we doing as artists? What are we doing as humans? And I know, I believe that at your school, you're all about the practice. You're all about sit down and play with watercolor and do it day after day or week after week and just let that inform, let that be a part of you. Let that be let that help create you, right? This practice of doing something. But it genuinely seems like the days of selling your artwork because it is somehow visually special, those days got to be over. Because the things that are coming out of are remarkably interesting and beautiful looking.
I mean, are we at a point where artists were in, say, 1850, 1860, when, you know, photography was starting to come out? Late 19th century, when you know, Eastman brought out the first, you know, really available consumer cameras, and Impressionism comes about, right? So because basically artists say, well, we're not going to compete with cameras, we're going to create something completely new that's different. I mean, the question is, can we come up with something that AI can't come up with?
That's the question.
But I think really the way that people are talking about it now, it seems, is they're saying our role as artists is to figure out how to play the AI, like how to inform it, how to curate it, how to guide it, and that it is just another tool.
That may be some artist's role. I don't think I'm going to take up that role, even though I actually am using AI quite a bit. Like, I've been blogging the past few months, and I only illustrate it with AI imagery.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. But it's not because it's more about just wanting to document this time, because even the AI, it's changing so fast that like the type of imagery I'm getting, I won't get forever, because it's really weird and tweaky right now. And it's getting so much better that it'll get more consistently reliable and realistic and things like that. And I'm really excited by just how strange it looks right now, but it won't look that way forever. Someday I'll be nostalgic, and I think maybe we all will be nostalgic for when AI got things wrong.
like low res. Well, I don't think that it's getting it wrong. I think it's a purposeful limitation they've put on it. So, for instance, eyes, right? Eyes are often like really messed up I find, in a lot of things you generate. But then I was reading about,
I heard about
this one group that basically has put together an AI thing where they've taken away all limitations. And so you can create like pornography, and you can create violent images, and you can create, you can take an image of a celebrity and have them, you know, killing somebody.
Yeah.
Whereas most of the platforms have put in roadblocks so that you can't do that kind of thing. But already, you know, once one person does it, then it's out there. It's loose, you know. And then the next thing they're going to do is video. That's supposedly months away. And they've also already done audio, so you can basically have anybody saying anything. Yeah.
You're right. So to follow up what you're saying, like, our job as artists is to curate it or work with it or something. I think I'm genuinely feeling my job is to like stay as far away from it as I can and gather a community of people and protect them somehow from the sinister and violent and troubling ways in which it's going to creep into our lives. I mean, it's just my sort of like, maybe it's a Luddite streak. Maybe it's more of a back to the farm kind of.
Well, I mean, or is it like, you know, think about like the era when digital music or at least like electronic music became more and more the mainstream, and, you know, you had like beds of synthesizers on everything. And then there was a movement towards acoustic, you know, people playing ukuleles and things. So possibly, you know, we'll be drawing with dip pens, and we'll regress and do cool stuff that maybe human. I don't know. I mean, is Procreate another example of that? Like, Procreate is a tool that we use to make art, and you can kind of simulate any effect, but obviously you still need a person to use it. I don't know.
I mean, first of all, I just want to say the phrase, I'm gonna try and lead the regression. The regression back to the land, back to the analog, whatever. I want to be one of the,
like, derriere garde as opposed to avant-garde.
I gotta write that down too.
Watch your ass. Yeah, but I mean, I
was just going to say about Procreate. I think that is a really great tool And what it's allowing is for a lot of people who have struggled with the tools of art making and communication of just a slightly, or a little bit unsurmountable. Procreate has allowed them to make that leap, and I think it's almost entirely an empowering tool. I love seeing people come with work from it, and but yeah. So I don't know if that it's not what we're talking about. I don't think.
Well, I mean, I feel like digital technology has entered into the world of comics in both good and bad ways over the last 25 years, right? I mean, to me, like inking, it seemed like it began with like coloring and inking, and then you started having like everything had gradations on it, and everything looked airbrushed, and a lot of the kind of charm to me of the old way of doing comics changed, and also the layouts and the design and obviously typography. There were just all these different things. Like, what was your feeling about it as it kind of entered more and more into making comics?
Well, I think I just didn't like it when it was garish, but I liked it when it wasn't. And now it's gotten to the point where I can't really tell. Like you said, it started with coloring and lettering. It probably started with lettering first, but that got mechanical easily. So it was very easy to make what looked like comic book lettering, but it was, maybe garish is the wrong word, but very customary. It looked very customary, and that didn't thrill me. So when I would see too much mechanical lettering, to me, it felt like this work would look better with hand lettering. That wasn't true with coloring. Coloring just went through phases, right? It goes through trends, right? And some of it's technological. It was flat colors in the 50s and 60s and 70s because that's what was easy to print. As Baxter printing, they called it for a while, like enabled larger gradations and stuff. The people using mechanical flaps worked hard to adapt to it, and then the computers came and caught up, and then everybody added gradations and stuff, and that was a trend that was like a little garish, I think. But it's taste, maybe some people love it, but I mean, honestly, it really comes down to taste. And if I don't like when things do look mechanical unless that's the purpose. And a lot of times what people do when they're working with computers is they settle for the defaults. So if they open up Photoshop or Procreate or whatever, and it defaults to this type of font and this type of line spacing, especially, and this type of, balloon plate, type of balloon and stuff, and they just settle for the defaults, that bums me out, but it's not a big deal.
Is that in professional comic making, you mean? Or
I don't know what's professional and what's
as opposed to like a student who's like first making their things and they just kind of jump. I mean, there's so many apps now that you can on an iPad easily make something that looks like a comic using photos and stuff like that. Right. So you're not talking about that kind of thing. You're talking about something that's published.
I've seen work that is more large scale and professional. Maybe it comes from a small publishing house or maybe even a big publishing house where the lettering just does look like they settled for all the defaults. And they didn't really think about the graphic design of a page, which involves the letters as much as the drawings. And it just bums me out because it's just another artistic choice you can make and you should make. I want to choose to letter it this way because it's the best thing for the story and the best thing for the ideas I'm trying to communicate.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always times when technology comes into the creative world and it makes work easier, right? It makes it easier to do it. Certainly. But it's really easy also to get lazy because you could apply a Photoshop filter to a photograph and have it look vaguely like a drawing. I mean, those kinds of things. But I think somehow deep inside us as human beings, we look at that kind of thing and we know, right? We know that this is not coming from the right place.
But that's the event horizon we're going to be passing through real soon, right? Where we're not really sure. Some of those, you must know Dave McKeon, the artist, right? Who did all the covers to Sandman and stuff. He just published a book, which is already out of print, even though it's published it like last month, about his journey with AI. And one of the first things he did was he had an assignment for an album cover, and he had some ideas, and he typed those ideas into what do we call it, Midjourney, and he said the work that came out instantly in 2 minutes was as good as anything he would have done, and it looked like it was in his voice and style, and that's a really unique artist saying that about work, saying his own work was unrecognizable, or someone else's, or his work, the AI's work was recognizable as his. And so, like, if even somebody who, and he does have a pretty deep connection to his humanity. I think he's also a musician and all these things. I don't, what I'm saying is I don't think he's just in it for the bucks. So I don't know. I think that was just a bit of a question about, I'm not so sure we're going to always know that, whether or not something is false or not. If false is even the right word.
I was looking at this website this weekend. They took an image and they said, is it AI or is it a person? Or is it an illustrator? So it showed you like 20 images in succession. And I think I was 80% correct. There are things I could see about it where I go like, the decisions that were made here are kind of insane. Like a person wouldn't make these decisions. Right? And sometimes it would be a dead giveaway, like like there'd be a book and the title would be like in the kind of gibberish letters that you see when you're in a dream, you know, and you say, well, clearly that's like no illustrator would do that. But there certainly were times where it was really, really difficult to tell. There's this thing that I read about where you can put in some kind of parameters and it will generate just music that's just constantly going. Right. So you can just say, I want like, you know, these are the 6 variables. And then suddenly it's just basically like an endless mix of AI music. Could that happen with an amalgamation of storytelling where you could say, make me a comedy about chickens, and then it just generates a movie or it generates a novel or, and you just sort of absorb it.
I'm 100% sure it will someday. I think this was my thought this morning, is that the first people to lose their jobs, I don't like phrasing it that way, it seems not accurate, but I'll go with it. The first people to lose their jobs will be composers, film and TV composers. You know, a lot of those musicians have already lost their jobs unless they're in a strong union or something, you know, back in the day when even an episode of Star Trek in the 90s or something, they would bring out this mini orchestra and they would score the whole thing. And now they don't do it with real instruments, but they do it with a real composer. And that real composer probably pretty soon won't be necessary. And the producers, the people making the thing, I mean, the producers who are the high up, who are the ones who own the content and who are, you know, who answer to the fans, they're going to want AI. I think.
I mean, I saw it, I mean, because I was in advertising for years, and we would certainly, early in my career, we'd hire somebody to write a piece of music for, for a commercial. And then pretty soon they were bringing in basically what sounded like a final track that they had made alone in a keyboard. And then because it was advertising, we were always looking for ways to spend money. We would bring in real musicians to like double what you know, because it was like, that was unacceptable. We need to have a string section. So they bring in like 4 guys. But another thing though, that was photography. So we always, you know, we spent a lot of money on photo shoots and not just hiring a photographer, but also going and overseeing it. If you have a product shot and now it's become stock photography. Whereas in my day in advertising, there was stock photography, but you would never use it because it would be horrible, you know? Right. But now stock photography is really broadly available and also incredibly cheap. Yeah. I use stock photography almost every day.
And good quality.
Yeah, it's good quality. But now the next thing, of course, is AI stock photography, you know, so because you can, you know, particularly like, because, I mean, there's settings in AI where you can say, shoot it as if it was, you know, commercial tabletop glamour food photography, you know, those kinds of things. And also another thing is you can, of course, set in the style And you could set it in style. You can say, I want it to be shot like this particular photographer, just like you can with an illustrator. So I think photography is already screwed, but now even more so.
But let's open up that can of worms a little, because I'm really curious about how we're going to go forward as humans. And to some degree, it's really going to help. What matters to some degree is our governing bodies. Because what am I getting at? Let me backtrack. What you just described at the advertising agency is really fun. I was in advertising and public relations too, and it was a blast to have a recording, a day where you're in the recording studio, or a photo shoot day, or any number of other creative projects. And so, yeah, we had the luxury of spending money, right? But it was partially because it's such a thrill to make art. And so there's going to be some forces that are saying, no, do it as cheaply as possible, because it's a product and it's selling a product, and et cetera, et cetera. So where do we take those impulses to make art and to collect, and to do it in groups too, right? If it's a photo shoot, you got 3 or 4 people in the room, and it's you got the set dresser. It's a great creative collaborative project. I guess I'm saying, I think people were going to have to figure out how to find those safe places where we can make art, safe from market forces. I don't know.
Well, here's a thought that I was having while you were describing that. If you think about, humans have created art and music and various other things forever, right?
Sure.
So it's only really in the last couple hundred years, or let's say maybe since the Renaissance, that there have been people who are professional makers of art, right? And if you think about music in the 19th century, it was sheet music. And, you would buy the latest songs from Tin Pan Alley, and you would play them on the piano, and everybody would gather around and sing together. And that was music making. Yeah, there are some people whose job that was, but music was still something that we all did.
Right.
I think that's, when you go back to what you were talking about before with Sketchbook Skool, I think the process of making art is really fun. And it's not about the result. So yes, I could get an AI to do a much better version of a drawing of my dog, but I wouldn't have the experience of what it's like to draw my dog. Exactly. That's a completely human experience. So maybe what it is that there will be certain kinds of creative people, humans, that create certain kinds of art. But there will also be AIs creating huge amounts of stuff for us. And then there will be human art activities that we can all do. And, a lot of professions will go away. They will go away, but the people won't go away. Those creative people will still be there. And because they're creative people, they'll come up with other things to do and other ways of making money. And, it's fine. It's just like there are fewer trades of certain kinds that have gone away, but they've been replaced by other things. So maybe it's not a bad thing. Maybe it's actually going to make art into what it should be, which is a human activity disconnected from commerce.
I agree with that. With a little bit of trepidation about whether or not we all get shoveled under the landslide of everything being automated. So long as we can persist and exist, then I think what you just described is great. But you
may not be able to be a professional graphic novelist.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you are, because your stories still are human and come from your experience. So
I think it'll be pretty niche. I don't know. Publishing is changing so dramatically anyway. It's barely hanging on. And although it's barely hanging on from the strength of people in the industry, very dedicated, so people are still earning advances, and they're still publishing a large number of books a year in hopes that one will hit. And the editors and publishers are mostly behind those books. But in the future, when the AI is writing equally good books, even in a literary fiction genre, even in something that seems arty, then it's really going to be hard, I think. And in which case, I don't know. We just make art and make stories for each other. We find a group and trade amongst ourselves. I don't know where it's going. I don't know.
I mean, look, publishing, the majority of books that are published right now are not published by publishers anymore.
Right.
Published by individuals, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't know, maybe it becomes like going to the ballet or going to a concert, that they're human experiences.
Right. Right.
And then there's other kinds of experiences.
Right. Right. And it should be, yeah. I mean, I actually hadn't thought of that analogy, but I think theater is a great analogy because at the moment you cannot remove the human experience from it. Like you go there and you're in an audience and the people on the stage are real and they're in front of you and they're having the exact same moment you're having, where you're all sharing that moment. And yeah, maybe things that we're used to being just products like books, postcards and other things, maybe that is, when they're human, they do become more of a theatrical event or something.
I guess so, but maybe it's also that you'll be able to put on like your VR helmet and have that experience at home.
Yeah, yeah. To have the experience of what? Of
being in a theater, but you're actually in the metaverse. And
I mean, it's tricky now. I mean, we're definitely out of my league right now, but I know I play like Roblox with my daughter, and it's a shared world, right? And she and I are on different devices, and it's pretty amazing. And I'm playing with other people who, they're probably children out who knows where. And some of those experiences have been actually pretty profound. I had one game where I was role playing a bird, a little parakeet. It was extremely profound and weird. And so yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe there's a lot of the metaverse to be talked about or to be looked forward to, I guess.
But just to go back to where we were before, I think that isn't the core of art the human experience? Isn't it about? It's not about just the execution. It's not about the technique. It's not about whether you can draw it to look like this or that. Right. It comes down to like who we are, what we've experienced, what we want to say to other people. Yeah. Like, is that really something that AI can ever simulate?
Well, it really did. I mean, let's describe two different audiences, right? There are the audiences who are going to buy a book or a painting or whatever other kind of music because they like it, right? Because they groove on it. It really appeals to them. They don't care whether it's AI or human. And then there's the second kind of audience that want human experiences, that want, and I've gotten more this way. I don't know if you have as you've run your school for so many years, but I've gotten this way where I prefer, here, I have them right here, even though I know we won't show this to the audio, but I prefer books that look like this these days, that are like very hand-drawn and hand-folded. Yeah, and like this thrills me. Again, it's back to the earth. It's banjo and and whatever we were talking about, dulcimer playing, and so these are very human little products or human little artifacts or something. I'm not sure what to call them. And the act of drawing a dog is a really profound thing if you are really there with that dog for that couple of minutes. And it's lovely to share. Hey, look at this drawing I made of my dog while I sat and sort of meditated with this dog for a couple of minutes. And then I share one with you and we share, and nobody makes any money, but it's a really delightful human experience. Yeah. I mean, I think that's what you're saying, right?
I think so. I mean, I think what I'm saying is that maybe creative things, creative endeavors are less about scarcity and less about,
right.
Professionalization and skill. And they are more just about, humanity and human experiences. And, I mean, because if you think about the speed with which this is happening, what will it be like 50 or 100 years from now? What will a generation that had this their whole life think about making these things? I mean, hopefully we'll still be around. Hopefully there won't be, flooding and 200 degree temperatures. But given that we will, still be around in some form, maybe we'll still always crave that human connection.
Yeah, I think we will. What I'm worried about is how difficult it's going to be to get people involved in the arts if
They can't make a living at it.
Well, no, yeah, we're definitely gonna have to get used to that. But also, like, if I'm surrounded by art by AI, and it's all beautiful, and I say, "Look, mommy, I did this," but I look all around me and all the AI art, which comes out in 2 minutes, and I've already, since I was 3, I've been typing things into DALL-E or whatever, and like, can I get comfortable with the large learning curve? Not even learning curve, but just like the quirkiness that a human has when it makes art, especially in early stages. Will we be able to get over that disappointment that it doesn't look like the stuff we're seeing everywhere?
But we can say that now about photography. And
well,
and what about like kids learning to play musical instruments? So you have like the Suzuki method or whatever, where you have kids who are 3 years old learning how to play violin.
That. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So what's the point of that? I mean, you could just buy a record. You could download, a recording of Beethoven's string quartet. I mean, why do we need people to learn this stuff? Because it's a human experience, right? That's profound, that teaches us discipline, that gives us appreciation, all those kinds of things that come from making art that enrich life.
Yeah,
absolutely. Otherwise we would all like just eat like microwave, food substance. I mean, we can mechanize every aspect of the human experience, but I don't think we want to. I mean, that's ultimately the choice we do have to have. We don't have to have the government say, you're not allowed to make images that look like something. But we can say, as people, we're just, we want to continue to maintain certain parts of things under our control and under our creativity.
Yeah, I think I completely agree. I think I'm a little bit worried, and because our tendency as humans or as Westerners or as capitalists or something is to mechanize everything. It's to not be concerned with the environment, with anything. How convenient can I make it for you? Let's get it to you as quickly as possible. Figure out the markup, get it. And boy, I just went on an anti-capitalistic rant and lost my own train of thought. But so I think I just mean we need to be vigilant and we're going to have to get used to saying no pretty often. Like, no, I don't want that kind of experience. I want the human experience. No, I don't want this book that's been created by an AI. I've got that way with like, no, I don't want a movie created by committee. I've never seen any of those Marvel movies. Like, I think I've seen about half an hour of like the X-Men or something, because they're so committee driven and they're so profit driven, and the comics themselves were so profit driven. Sorry, I've just alienated half the audience who loves Marvel movies, but part of what I'm saying is I would rather it be much smaller, much more human. I would rather know what your sister-in-law made on her video this weekend, or something like that. I'd much rather see something honest and earnest like that.
I think we're already seeing that with, what is that new platform called? Be Real. Do you know about Be Real?
I've heard of it once or twice. What is it exactly?
So Be Real is like, it's almost like the early version of Instagram. Uh-huh. So basically what it is you sign up, you connect with your social network, and then at a certain time of day, you get an alert that says, take a picture right now of where you are and what you're doing. And so basically, like, you can't curate it. There are no filters. It's just like, boom, what are you doing right now? And so it's a way of stripping away artifice and saying, let's just connect and tell each other the truth about what we're doing. And it's very popular, I think, for that reason, because it's almost like when you give people all the possible tools and and you give them the Marvel movies of the world, they go back and say, you know what, I want to watch a Charlie Chaplin film, or I want to go and watch, something that's an independent film made by a small team.
Yeah.
I think we're always going to fluctuate. We don't want to just eat McDonald's all the time, but we might want to eat McDonald's occasionally. So I have faith in humanity, that naive as that may be, because I feel like on one hand, when we make it really easy for ourselves, a lot of us do just go there, and we drive and we drive an automatic, and we assume we won't be driving at all because we'll have self-driving cars everywhere. And maybe it'll be like WALL-E, where we're all, weigh 400 pounds and we're sitting around in bark loungers with VR helmets on all the time.
Right.
And if so, then maybe we deserve to become extinct. But maybe not. Maybe we're better than that. And we're not. Just because you can buy candy doesn't mean you eat only candy. Mm-hmm. I mean, we are. I think people do like to put themselves into difficult situations, right? We like to stress ourselves. We like to take away the things that make life easy in order to appreciate better the things that we do have.
True.
I don't know. I don't think we're going to come to a conclusion, but I'm always optimistic, as I know you are too.
It's eroding a little, let's say, my optimism, but I stand on the same side you do. Like, I like the people around me. I like the human experience. I like seeing what people do. I like being a part of what we all do together,
And we don't want to become like old cranks. Well, back in my day, we used to sharpen pencils ourselves,
I know.
Why, we had paper when I was a boy, and now look at you people with your... Yeah, so hopefully that's not the case, that we're not just cranky old Luddites. I love technology. I always have, so...
Yeah.
Bring it on.
I just ordered an iPad because I was... and it hasn't even come yet. Like, I keep checking my mail. Has it come yet?
You've never had an iPad till now?
No, it's not that. I had one right before the pandemic. We bought one for the school with the pencil. And then the pandemic hit and I thought, like, well, I'm going to be holed up in the house for a while. Let me see how this works. I didn't like it much, but I also knew that it was just me. So I gave it to Emma, who runs the school with me. And, I've got some other iPad that is super ancient. It can't even run half the programs it's trying to run anymore. But meanwhile, I've been doing these comics in ink through the pandemic and a little before, and having a great time of it. But about the past 6 or 8 months, I've been really slow and kind of stuck, and I couldn't figure out why. And then I realized, like, oh, it's because my medium is stopping me. It's like, it's a little too laborious to get the ink ready and to dip the pen and all that stuff. And my ideas are a little too frequent. Like, and so like that disconnect is starting to appear. And so the first thing I did was I got out a cheap marker and I started inking with that instead, because I have been a real purist about ink, and that was a blast. And then I said, I'm just going to do this thing I've been threatening to do for a couple of years, which is try Procreate again. So I'm waiting for it to start, but I know for a fact this time it'll take, because the rationale is there. I sort of know this world I've created, and I'm really happy with it. And I know that there's a lot more waiting to unfold, but it needs to unfold more quickly. And I know that the computer will aid it. So yeah, I'm really excited. Maybe tomorrow I'll have an iPad.
That's exciting. I can't wait to see what you do with it. I mean, I find in general with Procreate, I'm much more playful than with anything else.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the colors. I don't know if it's just like how nice the pencil feels on the glass. But I just find like I make much wackier things, and
right.
I still draw all the time in watercolor on paper, but really the wilder stuff that I made has always been on Procreate. So I hope that you have the same experience. That
must feel good. Both those things must feel good, right? To do watercolor and to make these wild things on Procreate. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when I started with Procreate, I was trying to simulate analog things. So I spent like a lot of time trying to figure out, like, how do I do watercolor exactly? How do I make something look like a dip pen? And then one day I said, you know what? This has nothing to do with that. Don't use it for that. Use it for what it is. And, it's like you make these images that are, and you get colors that you can't possibly get in any, it's stained glass, right? It's light coming through color. It's incredible looking. And particularly if ultimately what you're making is something that's going to be, people are going to look at on the iPad, or they're going to look at on a computer screen, then it makes sense. It's not going to, because invariably when you print it, it's sort of like, meh, But actually these pictures are right behind me. A lot of them are from the iPad. So
it's kind of blurry, but that's cool.
I keep them that way, because if you saw them well, you'd be like, they're not that good actually.
But again, that's like the experience of making them is what mattered.
Yeah, I have a lot of fun with it. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're in a situation where you can share that fun. You can share that experience. Like, here's how to have fun and feel good while using Procreate. And that's a fantastic place to be in.
It's true. Well, I hope
know
you have
I'm
fun.
going to go through. I'm going to go through that phase you just described, though, I know for a fact. I don't know how long it'll last, where I will be trying to replicate what I do in ink. And at some point, I will have that that brainstorm, like, oh, dummy, this is, treat this like something different. I don't know. It's okay. I know that phase is waiting for me. Might be a month, might be a couple.
Yeah, I mean, there are companies that make tools that are designed to make old school analog looking things on Procreate.
Yeah.
I'm sure you know about them too. So you can go in that direction, but to me, it was always like, why not just make something different? So, yeah. All right, cool. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me about what I didn't think we were going to chat about. It was actually really fun. I'm interested in a lot of things, and I don't actually know anybody who's interested in them the way I am. So I'm glad to know that now I can at least bug you about AI periodically.
Oh, I'm really, really interested in it. And it's a mixture of fear and awe and delight and fear. I mentioned fear.
And delight.
All these things. So yeah, reach out anytime.
I love talking to Tom. I hope you enjoyed it too. If you'd like to learn more about his work and his school, visit tomhart.net. I'll add his website in the show notes and in the description on YouTube. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you next time with more Art for All.